Hi, and welcome to our new lecture together. We're going to complete what we already started in the previous lecture, talking about the importance of democracy and political parties. We already discussed a few points about this topic. We're going, inshallah, to complete several aspects in political science and political parties. We're going to discuss functions of political parties, functions relevant to the existence of political parties since this um, body already started to exist in the literature of political science. In general, we can summarize the importance of political parties in participating successfully in the political process and the political life and to contribute to the consolidation of democracy. Political parties have to demonstrate certain capacities in political science. These capacities are called functions in a way or another. So it is not a new actor nowadays. It is part of the general image of the political science. It is one core component which are so responsible for many aspects and capacities which we're going to refer later on as functions. Let's go more in a deep analysis for such functions and capacities. In general, we need to recognize political parties as actors who are responsible for number one, articulating and building, responding, representing certain social interests. Parties express public expectations and demands of social groupings to the political system in general. This function of political party is reflecting the responsibility of shaping political opinion or making tendencies in the general opinion of the communities. A second function could be that political parties uh, um, are responsible in a way or another to recruit political persona and nature future generations of politicians. They select people and present them as candidates for elections, for example. They are responsible to create what we call the elite in the political life. A third function could be that political parties develop political programs. Parties integrate various interests into a general political project and transform it into a political program for which they later on campaign to receive the consent and support of a majority during the elections. And this function called function of integration. A fourth function could be that they promote the political socialization and participation of citizens. Parties create a link between citizens and the political system. They enable political participation of individuals and groupings with the perspective of success, with the prospect of success, with the tendency to be winning. And we call this function the function of socialization and participation. So we mentioned four functions in this slide. Number one, the function of political opinion making. Number two, the function of selection. Number three, the function of integration. Number four, the function of socialization and participation. Let's talk about another two important functions by political parties. Um, uh, Political parties, definitely, are responsible for organizing the government. Political parties who participate in the elections to occupy political charges or positions or to occupy certain parts of the authorities, whether parliament or executive, blah, 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 they are responsible in shaping the government. Normally, in party democracies, a good part of government authorities arise from political parties, and this function called function of exercising political power. Another function could be that political parties contribute to the legitimacy of political system in establishing the connection between citizens, social grouping, and the political system in general. The parties contribute in anchoring the political order in the consciousness of citizens and social forces in general. And this function is called the function of legitimating or how to make the relation as legitimate. So in the slide we talked about two other functions, the function of exercising political power, and we talked previously about the separation between powers. The second one is the legitimating function, and this is one of the most important functions because it is not only representing people or representing power, it is as if political parties turn to be a joint. And this joint is not only responsible for representing the elements of the community or the political life, but also to give a legal face for this relation. Let's reflect all these functions on the reality, on the modern communities. In modern societies, the process of political opinion building is a very polymorphic process. The mass media, social organizations, associations, citizens, initiatives, religious, community of laborers, all pattern of grouping, the modern form of electronic communication like social media, Instagram, Twitter, all the virtual communications, um, all the different aspects of the modern life changed exactly the way how people communicate and participate. All this exercised a huge influence on political opinions and political decisions and the process of decision making in general. If we do compare the process of decision making 10 years ago or more than like 15 years ago before the social media exists, there's a huge differences between the two operations because people nowadays are not only connected through certain control channels. Nowadays, even the best, the most strong, powerful governments could never ever be capable to control people under the new circumstances. Nevertheless, political parties are still the principal agent uh, to aggregate public opinion and represent it in the political decision-making process. And they finally also take the political decisions through their representatives in the parliament, government, etc., etc., even in lobbying and in the opposition. By following the work of the parties, receiving and evaluating its argumentation during political debate, citizens can orient themselves politically through the parties. Furthermore, by engaging with a party, every citizen can exercise some influence on political decision-making process. This is very actually controversial because in spite of all what we've talked about, the change of the environment, the change of the channels of communication, political parties succeeded in keeping their core role in affecting the decision-making process in the political life. On the other side, oppositional parties have the function to criticize the government, control it, and put up constructive alternatives. This function is of great significance for a democracy, because without opposition, a government tends to drift towards a very dictator, a very tough, and fails to search for alternatives. By fulfilling these functions, political parties are providing important services for building a democratic communities, for organizing a new pattern of communities. The quality of the delivery, that's the way they comply with their functions, contributes in a decisive way to the reputation and the potential of the political parties. A very important point here we need to talk about, or we need to point, is this could be a general perspective for the functions, but the most important point is that it is not about the function as a function, it is about the actual implementations of these functions in a way or another. How certain political parties in a real life really practice. Do they really represent people in a way? Do they really follow the interest of the people? Do they are they really aware of these functions as a core for their existence, or they were drafted by certain interests or certain agendas or ideologies for another tendency in the political life? What is the motive for these political parties that really shape their attitudes and performance? Um, in spite of all these speaking and talking about the functions, definitely we need to spotlight on one of the most important issues in political science, which is who will be represented through these political parties. If you do remember, we thought that political parties or political life in the ancient ages excluded minorities and women. That's why the issue, or the gender issue, was a very important, critical issue to discuss when we talk about the existence of women, or the existence or the participation of women in the political life, and the concept behind the quota for women and for minorities. Actually, we have two tendencies here. Some people are with having certain quota for women and minorities. Others are against. They need to have equal opportunities. Like, let's see this in a different way. If women deserve and capable and skillful to play a role, give them the chance. If they are not, they are not supposed to be there. But, and the excuse behind the other tendency is that we need to give them space first to reflect themselves, then to ask them to compete. So, even though most constitutions all over the world stipulate equal treatment of men and women, women are underrepresented worldwide in parties and political leading functions. In many countries, efforts are being made to achieve stronger participation of women in politics, as intensified contribution in parties is a basic requirement for this purpose. In order to give women a larger space of political contribution and involvement, certain statutory female quota has been set up in many countries with different regulations and percentages. Usually the point is to reserve a minimum number of party offices and positions for women during elections. Experience shows that such quota regulations where they work can in practice actually contribute to a higher percentage of women in policies. But the question is not about whether to have a number of women or not. It is not about quantity, it is about the quality of participation. Do we need women only as number? Is it only about having them as number to give that ideal shape for political parties? I don't think so. I think we need a real participation, a real representation for legal rights, a real protection, real representation for their needs, rights, law of protection, law of work, etc. So the problem with quota for women and minorities is not about whether to participate or not nowadays. It is more about a quantity or a quality participation. It is the dilemma to which distance we can really have a strong women, a strong people from minorities, from certain minorities, and real decision-making positions. For example, can we see a woman in a military position that can take real serious decisions relevant, for example, to a war issue or to military or international cases or international relation issues? Definitely here someone will say that we have many examples, not definitely in the Arabic world, but from the Europe world, but still these are very rare examples. You are not capable to say this is a phenomena, this is part of the political system nowadays. It is only couple of women who managed to reach these positions. Like, I don't want to mention names because I don't want to like looking passing for a certain women, but what I want to spotlight on is it is all about a real representation, a real participation, not a number participation. However, experience has also shown that quota regulations are often not brought into practice. So the outcome is that there are no more women in the parliaments than before. Hence, there must be effort to ensure that the female quotas take effect and that there is an increase in the percentage of women in politics, whether in the parliament, whether in the government, whether in the offices, the national offices, etc. This is certainly a question of political culture that needs time to develop. This is again, it's all about the context of the communities. Does our society, for example, accept to have a prime minister or a female prime minister? I don't know, and I don't think so. Some parties apply quota regulations to guarantee certain minorities appropriate cooperation and support within their rank and file. Policies to guarantee ethnic minority representation take place in two forms: candidates nomination quota in political parties, and legislative reservation. Legislative reservation includes reserving seats for specific groups, and only members of a group can vote for the representatives of the group. This is not only about women, it's also about certain minorities, whether these minorities are religious, race minorities, etc., etc. Certain parties are making sure to have certain percentage of the seats for these minorities to guarantee that they are having the support of the community. But again, it is never about the number of participants. It is all about who's really participating, who's really part of this? Does it really representing their real existence, identity, needs, and rights, or it is only a way to manipulate the reality and the equality? Okay, let's talk here about the regulation of parties in general. How does a political party being regulated in any community? We have three actually tendencies. Political parties are regulated due, number one, the centrality to democracy, number two, the power of the party, number three, administrative convincing or necessity. These are three different various um, tendencies that usually stand behind any regulation for the political parties. They do participate. Uh, Sometimes we can have all of them. Sometimes we can have one. Sometimes we can have two of them. The important point is to understand how these regulations work together. Uh, and talking about the regulation more and more, state regulation of parties is particularly prominent in the area of party finance, actually. Regulation of spending, regulation of fundraising, public subvisions. And this is one of the most controversial issues because some parties are not transparent about this particular part. They don't ever say where they receive the fund from. Similar to all other aspects of political science we've discussed, things changed, things developed. We might have new functions for political parties. We have new tendencies, new shapes, and new identities for political parties. But in general, we can summarize again the modern functions, the new functions of political parties um, as set of new functions. Let's talk about these functions in a brief way, and I'm gonna leave you later on to discuss, search, and decide what are the most popular, the most common, and what are the less common. Number one, it is again the function of coordination. To coordinate with the government, to coordinate with the community, between government and society, and to coordinate with the international level. And this is one of the most dangerous functions ever because when the political party um, takes a new function across the borders, it turns to be very dangerous. Number two, contesting elections or to practice the political life. To provide candidates, as we said before, support certain candidates, formulate policies, participate in certain tracks, whether directly or indirectly. Number three, recruitment and selection. It is not only to integrate, as we said previously, but also here to work on several levels, vertical, horizontal, to integrate certain associations, labor associations, for example, media, certain affiliates from many sectors in the community. The fourth one is to be capable to represent certain ideologies. Um, and in this part particularly, uh, in certain way, the political party might have a different identity or a different ideology than the entire community. And in this way, it tends to be very dangerous and threatening to the entire peace of their community. You can have a lot of examples, but we could never deny the example of Hezbollah, for example. They do belong for certain ideology, they do belong for certain perspective, uh, and this is very controversial because they say they do defend Lebanon, but Lebanese think they are belonging to a different ideology. So the idea of ideological background is one of the most controversial issues relevant to any political party, to any party that would participate in shaping the government or even to participate in the political life. Sometimes it is not necessary to be the one who win the elections. It is enough to have a very important, strong influence and impact and tools actually to be capable to direct the decision-making process inside the country. The last thing that we're going to discuss today is the tools concept, the core tools that any political parties might use or need to use to be capable to have a strong influence. We have several tools, but definitely we're gonna to discuss or to mention some of them. I'm gonna leave you with the quiz for today to tell me what do you know about tools and how political parties embody these tools during their political participation and attitudes. Number one, religion, money, ideology, emotions, reasonable track. Uh, These are various tools, starting from the religion, money, ideology, emotions, certain reasonable, practical. Um, what shape the core tool that give the best capacity to affect people is, as we said before, the context of the community. The general context of the community shape the importance of these tools in a way or another. Okay, thank you so much for joining me in this, and please concentrate on this lecture. It is one of the most important issues that could make you more capable to understand the nature of political science. Thank you so much. Please be safe and see you soon.